I'm sweaty.
Let's just do one eye each.
No mouth.
You were meant to be together.
I should put the Chewbacca mask on.
Would you? I'll give you $10.
I'm too hot.
I'll give you $10 for that. Well, I hate to. It's just why I hate to cancel because Misha likes it.
Mm-hmm.
What did Rachel say? I'll be there.
She did?
Yep. Good.
What's Sarah and Jane doing?
Sarah is actually preparing diversity curriculum for CAP, whether they know it or not, and it sounds like they don't know it, which is totally cool. And then Jane is spending some time with a friend who's really down and needs some support. Dustin!
Hello.
What's up, man?
How's it going?
Is going to scoot over here so that we don't have to be so far apart. Being married means you get to be together, right?
Yeah, that's the great part about it.
Really, actually the best, probably.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
Just working a lot. And I'm 31 now, so there's that. I made it.
Yeah, you did. Oh, and Jack says happy birthday.
Oh, hi, Jack.
Get off me. 70
How have you
pounds.
guys been?
Huh?
How have you guys been?
Good. We both officially started back to school.
Yeah, I start in, 11 days now? 12 days?
With what?
Addiction Studies program at SFCC.
So are you teaching or taking?
Taking.
So we're teaching.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, but that's very cool that you're continuing that. What's your ultimate goal?
I think my ultimate goal is to be a mental health therapist.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, down the line, we'll see. We'll see where God puts me.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jay and I both work at the Cheney School District, but in different schools. So she's the behavioral interventionist at her school.
Oh, sweet.
And so she's the one that they call when the student is leaving the grounds. Like,
oh, gotcha.
on the run, and we can't stop him. And I just got a job as the attendance secretary at Sunset. And
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, so last week was the official start for staff, but Tuesday was the official start for students. But of course, we don't have any students.
Yeah.
So it's been crazy and stuff, but this is the first time she and I have both gone to work every day for 8 hours a day since we got together.
Oh, wow.
So it's
That must have changed things.
this is what this feels like. So, because last year when I was finishing up my degree, I just worked 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day. So yeah, it's good though. We both like our jobs, but they're just weird right now. Hers especially is totally different than what it used to be.
Yeah, I bet.
So looking forward to kids being in the building maybe next week.
Yeah, I saw a school bus today. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Uh-huh. Not weird that you noticed it?
Yeah, because I wouldn't have before,
Right.
But it was just strange to see kids getting off of a school bus. I didn't expect it.
Yeah, so it'll be a limited number of students that are only in school for special reasons in the Cheney district. And I don't know where those kids were going because I thought Spokane was online too.
I thought it was too, yeah. I mean, it was in the valley. I don't see how that would be different.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. Well, Rachel and Misha both said that they were going to join us. Now, I know Misha's probably going to be late because he was out walking the dog. But I would fully expect Rachel to be here any second now.
Okay.
But are you looking at a laptop?
No, I'm on my desktop.
Oh, okay, cool. So Google Jesus Calms the Storm by Rembrandt. And I'm going to do a screen share, but if you can see it for yourself, it'll be a way better quality. And then pick any of the search ones that look like a decent copy of an original. And then blow it up so you can see it. So that's the story we're looking at today, and I want to look at the visual.
Oh, okay.
And then you also will read the story too. But I have just found that, like, I think I've preached on this text in different churches at least 3 times, and I usually bring this piece of art, and it's just fascinating to see. Like, I think it helps us as Christian readers to put ourselves in the story.
Yeah, I agree.
Because what do we know from Fishing Boats and Storms?
That they sink.
Right. I mean,
I don't know.
I've been on a fishing boat, but not that kind of fishing boat.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just such a beautiful. I love that era of art and that style, and so it's my favorite.
Yeah.
Anyway. But I think he says a lot in it. The text we're reading is right at the end of Mark 4, right at the end of Mark 4.
Can't get my lighting right.
I had to do I didn't have to. I was invited to preach for Pastor Heather at Bethany. And so she just does a Facebook Live. And so, yeah, I had to figure out all this lighting all of a sudden. I was like, wait, where am I going to be? And so I had lights like hanging above the front.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Can't imagine kids. Yeah. All our kids are doing this. We have 4-year-olds online doing preschool.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have parents coming in saying, well, they want to switch their kid to a different format because, you know, it's just too much and he can't focus. And I'm like, well, they're all doing that.
Right.
It's not your kid, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
I found out today 3rd graders don't know how to type. So when they have to record their answers, it takes them an hour.
Oh, because they go like this.
They don't even understand.
Oh.
But our kindergartners use keyboards. They get online.
Yeah, but typing out is different.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, especially if you don't even know how to spell, let alone type.
Yeah, I heard that one of our 1st grade teachers was asking the students to like finish the sentence or like use a word to start this sentence. And I was thinking, gosh, these are kindergartners that missed 3 months of last spring. Like we have kindergartners that couldn't pick out the letter B yet. So I don't know how that was a lesson on day 2.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot. So, well, let's dive in and we'll let the others catch up when they get here. How's that?
Sounds good to me.
Because I know you need to go, right?
Yeah, I leave at 6:50.
Yeah. Okay, so do you want to read this text and tell me what text you're reading from?
Yeah, so it's the NIV, and where you said the end of Mark?
Yeah, Mark 35 to the end. Mark 4, 35. Sorry.
4:35. And you want me to read?
Yeah.
Sure. So NIV. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him."
Yeah. I love that he gets mad at them. I'm always just so thrilled by that. Because he's annoyed.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't think I'm reading that into that. All of the commentaries say that's the proper way to understand his tone. And N.T. Wright, the commentary that I'm using, he says that this is yet another picture of Jesus very specifically saying to his disciples, don't you believe yet? Hi.
Hi.
And I seem to have lost Dustin.
Oh, I'm still here.
There you are. Oh, there you all are. Okay. So he said, Jesus says to disciples here very, very pointedly, where's your faith? Or don't you believe yet? And this sets up this this real moment that's going to happen, I think, in Mark 7, where Jesus really sort of lets them have it. Like, listen, I've been with you people for a long time now. What is your deal? You know? And here he is, Mark 4. And of course, we've talked about Mark being the fast food gospel, racing our way through the life of Christ. And it's only chapter 4 and he's already annoyed. You know, didn't take Jesus long to get annoyed with these guys. So Misha, we are at the very end of Mark, the Jesus calms the storm story.
Okay.
And are you on a laptop or desktop?
Desktop.
Okay, so go to a new window and Google Jesus calms the storm, Rembrandt. I mean, I can do a screen share, but it'll be way clearer. And then pick a really high quality one of those.
Okay.
And I think Rembrandt painted that based on actually the story in Matthew, but it's the same story. And I just love this picture. So actually, I'm going to do a screen share now, if I can figure out how to do this. Screen share. Okay. That's working, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would click the expand button in the top right.
Okay, and that's what you guys are looking at?
Yes. I actually went to the same one. So
Button in the top right.
Yep.
a little bit lower.
Got it. Your little faces were covering it. Okay, what do you think of that?
Good.
Okay, so you guys just talked to me about this thing for a while. What do you think?
It looks really, it's really interesting. Like,
Yeah, it's intense.
if you look at it, the artist is making a lot with lights and everything else. Because if you look at, you have like the left, it's very, very bright. You have the right, it's very, very dark.
Mm-hmm.
You also have all the people on the left are sort of battling the storm, and all the people on the right are sort of just listening to Jesus over here.
Yeah, it looks like they're pleading with him.
Uh-huh. You really have to, that's why I zoom in, because you can really see their faces.
Yeah, I mean, I had to look for Jesus, but I do think it's interesting that they're in the dark.
Oh, they're not in the light where you would normally think the Savior was.
Exactly.
His face is a little bit lit up, but
Mm-hmm.
so Rachel, I'm guessing this is you joining us?
Yes, hi. I got distracted by a YouTube video about a YouTuber who's been running a cult with like 1 million followers, but I'm here now.
Okay.
Well, welcome, and you came just in time for me to point out this poor gentleman right here.
Is he puking?
He is.
Yep.
That's the generally over the side thing to do. Rembrandt leaves no stone unturned here in the human experience. So this guy just looks like, like he's freaked to me, right? These two, look at this guy, he's grabbing Jesus by the collar, right?
So Jan, I would actually recommend downloading the
Oh.
picture.
Downloading what?
So if you click on the picture, you can actually download it, because that's what I did on mine, and you can zoom in a lot better.
Okay.
Oh.
So if you download that,
You're so
And then-
smart with the downloading and all the things.
and so you open it, you're just going to need to change probably what screen you're sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, so
No.
you just click that down there, and that should open up a new window for you.
Oh.
Oh, look at you.
And then you just need to change what screen you're sharing.
Because you can't see that?
Nope.
Oh. Okay. Well, now I need to move your little faces again. And now I need to find, where did you go?
We're all still here.
Where I've gone.
You could probably cancel your screen share and then re-share your screen.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how to get back to the larger zoom picture.
Hmm.
Maybe minimize that window.
Old people. All right. Screen share. This thing. Ah,
There we go.
okay.
So you can use the zoom in, and you can get pretty in depth.
Look at that. Oh, the guy puking looks even better. Thank you, Nisha. Okay.
It's not zoomed in on ours.
Yeah, we
so,
can't see that.
so if you want to use like the zoom in on the top left, that might make a change.
Here.
Oh.
There we go.
There we go. Now we're getting it
Okay.
good.
Oh.
Okay, so you can see this guy here is grabbing Jesus by the collar.
Mhm.
Right? See that? He's like, and then this guy's pleading, I think. He's also looks like he's pointing. Like, don't you see the look? Jesus, it's raining. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This guy desperately holding onto the tiller. This is the real fisherman here on the boat. What else have we got? What do you think, Rachel?
I mean, I love how, like, I know this is a whole thing, but the fact that, like, Rembrandt felt space to recontextualize this story into a context that made sense for him. It wasn't necessarily saying, like, oh, this is, like, Jesus is white and all the disciples are white and they're, like, dressed like someone from my century, because that's literally true. He's using art to say, this is my experience of the whole expression of human emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you can see yourself in this.
Mhm.
Right, and I just love all the dimensions. Here's another guy who's just working.
Yeah.
He's just, well, hey, you know, the sail has to go. This guy too. We're just pulling sails. We're just working. Like,
That guy actually might be trying to lash himself to the mast.
oh, you know what? He might be, because it looks like it's around his waist here.
Mhm.
We call this working the problem, right? Like in business, in management, we say don't get distracted by externals. Work the problem, right? So these guys are like, I don't know about this whole Jesus thing or whatever, but this, we're just going to tighten the sails down and keep working at it, right? And I have no idea what this guy's doing other than falling, and this guy's just getting pounded, right?
Yeah, and I guess he's not holding the fishing thing.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah, I don't know. Here's an oar sticking out.
No, it's kind of all random right there.
If you zoom in closely, it looks like there's someone inside the boat.
Oh.
This guy right here.
No, because I think that's just wood, but further below,
Down here?
right there, right, that guy right there.
Oh, he's hiding.
Oh, and there's someone who's praying too.
Where's that?
Directly to the left and down of Jesus.
Oh,
No, no,
Oh,
no.
no.
We're here.
Right there.
oh.
Oh, there is.
I have never noticed that, Rachel. And all of the times I have gone over, I've preached on this, 3 times or something.
It's because I've got good vision.
Yeah, I don't. So,
Or you have a good monitor.
right. And then this guy just, to me, is like despondent.
I wonder, like, the way I see it is that he might be talking to the guy inside
Oh.
the boat.
Yeah. That's what's cool about art that I have learned to open my mind to. Because if you'd asked me 10 years ago to bring a piece of art to a sermon, I'd have been like, pointless. Like, why would we waste time on anything but words? And now I look at this and I'm just fascinated. So do you guys, this is Rembrandt. So like Rachel said, he literally paints himself into the story.
Oh, wow.
And do you see he's looking right at us? Is that cool? He like
Yeah.
breaks the fourth wall. You know that term? Like in a TV show when they talk to the camera? Yeah.
Oh.
Isn't that cool? And he's scratching his head. I don't know what he's doing. Yeah, so that's why I bring this. There's other ones you can look up other, we haven't even talked about the lighting and the wind and this rope that's just flying around up here to show like how wicked the wind is.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to go look at other pieces of art. And for me, especially the older, the better. This isn't actually very old. You can find 6th century pieces of art that depict a lot of the parables in the Bible or a lot of the biblical stories.
The symbol on the flag at the top is a cross.
Oh, cool. Now, of all of the, I'm going to go back to regular view, I think. Of all of the artwork that I've looked at, specifically in order to bring it to a sermon, and what I do is print as good a copy as I can afford, and I actually give everybody in the congregation a copy so they can look at it, or I'll print it on the front of the bulletin for the week. And then I make them look at it, which is really awkward. But I've never found one that actually shows the other boats. So I wonder if that's from Mark and not from Matthew. So if any of you are curious, you could go find the story in Matthew and see if they don't mention there were other boats with him. But so in just for Rachel, so we're actually in Mark 4, 35 to 41. That's, you probably already found it. And it was bad. And you guys have probably all heard sermons on how bad the winds can get on the Sea of Galilee. They just whip up out of nowhere, and you know, fishermen and ships are lost all the time, these small fishing boats. And we have a lake nearby here called Rock Lake, which is south of Cheney, about 25 miles. And it has, for whatever reason, at least similar problems. And that a lot of our canyon lakes, you know, have problems with wind, but usually the sides of the canyon, lakes down here, the problem is there's no wind. But Rock Lake, for whatever reason, points like southeast, or points directly east. And so the wind just flies down the canyon walls. And it's not unusual in a summer for the rescue crews to have to go down to Rock Lake and rescue somebody who's gotten tipped over in their bass boat or something. It just all of a sudden comes up and this tiny little lake just goes crazy. So these guys had every reason to be scared because they knew what it was like to live near the sea. Like that was part of their existence, was if they didn't have personal experience of being fishermen, they'd certainly heard stories about the winds on the sea and what that could mean. And I think we've talked about here this sort of overarching thing that you should always keep in mind whenever the sea or the deep is mentioned from Jewish literature like this, is that the sea is bad. The sea is not good. It may talk about the bounty that comes from the sea, like the fish. And it's usually in terms of blessing, like luckily we got fish, or at least there were fish. You know, God gave us fish from the sea, but the sea was scary and bad. You know, they didn't have submarines, and so for all they knew, everything down below the sea was monsters. And so, yeah, you know, like we sit around campfires and tell horror stories about things that come out of the forest. They would tell horror stories about things that came out of the sea, you know. So Rembrandt got it right when he sort of painted this thing, like Dustin said, it's really intense. It's really dark. And this is the way they would have experienced even hearing, like Mark's readers, even hearing this story in the first century. They would have go, oh shoot, you know, like a storm on the sea, that's bad, that's really bad. Why was Jesus asleep? I mean, Jesus is from around there. So why isn't he, you know, why isn't he reacting appropriately to this danger?
Trust God. He's got it all under control.
Right? I mean, Jesus knows, I believe Jesus knew his destiny.
Yeah.
He knows he's not going to die in the boat. I don't know if he's already told Mark, maybe one of you remembers if he's already told the disciples, but I know from about Mark 9 on, he says, we're going to Jerusalem and I will die. So he clearly knows where his destiny lies. So he's unconcerned. But what do they think about that?
I mean, it's so interesting because he initiates this journey in the evening, knowing that they probably won't get to the other side. I don't know how long it's supposed to take till morning, the middle of the night. I don't know. Definitely not before nightfall. And then he just goes to bed. So maybe he's assuming it's going to take some time.
Yeah, I don't.
And he wants to take a break before the crowds show up again. Like that might just be a practical thing. He's tired.
I think it would be a really fun book study, a Bible study, for somebody to just find all of the places in Scripture where Jesus is tired.
He just wants to go to bed.
And just wants to go to bed. Janine and I are at the age where we look at the clock and go, darn, it's only 8. We can't go to bed this early.
They're escaping a multitude. There are a lot of people.
Yeah, you know. So he's asleep on a cushion. I like that too. He's not just sleeping on the wood. He's got padding back there. He's asleep, and they wake him up. I mean, I love this picture, and I love Rembrandt. I go back to this all the time. So Rembrandt has now painted this story for me. So in my mind, this is actually what it looked like, right? Except as Rachel points out, they all would have been much darker skinned than this, right? So, like, whose idea was it to go wake him up? Like, was it Peter? Did he panic? Well, that I can picture. I can picture Peter panicking. Like, oh my God, wake him up. You know, like, that's Peter, right? And that I could see as another way to tell this story. Peter panics. But so was it gentle? Did they go, excuse me, Jesus, pardon us?
Jack, no.
Or did they full scale just like,
Jack, go out.
what the heck? What are you doing? Wake up!
How are you sleeping through this?
Don't you care about us?
You know, I have been known in my life to occasionally look up and go, yo, down here. You know, so they wake him up. And they literally think we're going down. Like, and it says like they're on the verge of capsizing. Like the boat is filling up. I've been in a boat that started taking on water. It's very not funny, and I'm a really good swimmer. And I was really not amused. They go down. If you've ever seen a boat sink, it's really not, Titanic. It's just, you know, there's no saving the boat, you know. So They're swamping. That's a good, I think that's what your version had, right? Dustin was swamping. It's being swamped. That's a good boater's word.
Yep, it was nearly swamped.
Yeah, yeah. N.T. Wright has it quickly began to fill. It's a very British understatement by a very British man. We're going down, don't you care? There's a lot of assumption in that term, in that phrasing.
Mm-hmm.
Not don't you notice, but don't you care? You know, like, we're dying and you seem unconcerned. You know, very interesting. So, yeah. So N.T. Wright has it, he got up, scolded the wind, and said to the sea, silence, shut up. And I just find it interesting. I think I've shared with you, you know, I have a really high Christology. I mean, for me, Jesus was not just a good teacher. He was, you know, the incarnate Son of God with all of the power of the Creator, stifled for our sakes, right? So he didn't use his power, you know, he's self-limited. I've always learned that term, right? And we all self-limit to a degree in our various roles. A lot of us are doers, frankly. A lot of good Christians are doers, and we could just get the thing done. And a lot of us have to self-limit in order to let other people do the thing, you know. And Jesus, I think, is self-limiting when he's asleep in the boat. And so yes, he uses his power, we think, or the wind obeyed him. I love that language. He didn't do anything other than speak, right? But the wind died down because he spoke, right? What does that make you think about?
So I just finished a book with a book club. We were reading Native by Caitlin Curtis, who's a Potawatomi Christian. And she writes about her sort of journey of allowing herself and her faith to, and beginning the process of decolonizing her faith. It's a really, really beautiful book. I highly recommend it. And I've also been learning from my friend Lenore about a Lakota worldview. And there is such a deep emphasis on the land and the sea and the actual space that we're on itself as a relative. And about our relationship with those spaces. And so, especially that bit at the beginning about this sea being a very fearful place. This like dark place that like harbors monsters. But Jesus has been continually like using the sea and the water and the land, and partnering with it as an agent of his ministry. And so in this space, his disciples are very fearful of the sea. And he's like, actually, the sea knows me and it understands me. Like, why don't you have faith in that?
That's so good. Yeah, wow. When you said relationship, I thought, yeah, he spoke to the wind and he spoke to the sea. He didn't talk about them. That's so cool. Would you, after I post the video, would you go and post the name of that book? That would be great. Yeah, anything, guys, can you, I guess what I got from this is, you know, that God spoke the world into creation. And, every praise song ever, Dustin, that says, which is a quote from Job, that God told the sea this far and no farther. God puts limits on how far inland the sea can come. And if we believe the Genesis text, either metaphorically or literally, he spoke that all into creation. And here Jesus speaks again, and the wind and the sea obey him. The wind and the sea, as Rachel is opening our eyes to, have a relationship with their creator, and they recognize who he is in that relationship. I mean, I'm a very hierarchical person, and I'm perfectly happy with, lordship language and I'm perfectly happy that God is greater than me and I'm lesser, and I'm good with greater and lesser. I'm fine with that, right? But definitely within this context of relationship. I really like that. So what do you think of Jesus' next question in 40 to the disciples?
I mean, it's like he's just saying, like, how can you still not believe? Like, where is your trust for me that I'm not gonna, take care of the situation, that you're safe, you're protected, I got you.
I mean, he hasn't fed the 5,000 yet. This is the first storm that he has calmed, if I'm right. He has healed some folks. So I don't know, he asks them that after he stills the sea, but he asks them that based on their fear, which happened before he stilled the sea. So, I mean, not to talk badly about Jesus because, lightning bolts, but it seems a little snotty to kind of dig at them for being scared before they saw him be able to control the sea.
Depends on what they were afraid of that he's responding to.
Ooh.
Because the obvious thing is, oh, well, they're afraid of drowning. But he responds to the question, do you not care that we are perishing?
Ooh. So if they're afraid that he doesn't care, he has every right to say, how could you think that?
It could also be an and.
It's probably a both. But I would also point out that he's also showing them the difference between intellectually knowing something and actually believing something.
It's a great old pastoral story, which means you hear it in sermons and you're not sure it's true, about a pastor and his kid, and the kid's up playing in the balcony, and the kid, the pastor's busy up in the front or whatever, and he doesn't realize the kid has climbed up on the balcony rail. And so the dad sees this and he goes running down, or the mom, if your pastor's a female, he goes running down, and the kid says, I'm going to jump, which is, I'm going to get this wrong, a hope. He hopes, he's thinking that he could jump because he has hope that his, father would catch him. And then he says, here I come, and that's faith, but actually stepping off the balcony is trust. Like, until you leave the balcony, is it really trust? You can stand up there all day and say, I have faith. Or maybe it's the other way around. One's trust and the other's faith.
No, because I think it's trust. I think you had it right the first time. Because faith is believing something. and it's like, okay, this will happen. And I think trust is that trust that he will catch the kid.
I mean, that's the way I see it. And I know there's, the other story of, Jesus walking on the water toward them in the boat, and Peter climbs out to go meet him. And that's, that's trust, because Peter's like, I'll get out of the boat. I'll be fine. Of course, then he's not, because he's Peter, but
So my question is, did Jesus orchestrate this whole thing?
yeah, there you go.
Did Jesus, what?
Did Jesus orchestrate the whole storm and everything?
Because they're like, do you not care that we're perishing? Makes me think that they think that he can do something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's that. Good point.
So they've seen him heal, but why do they think that he can do something about the storm?
Mm-hmm.
So they had some hope.
Are they just hoping for some like last words with him?
Right.
That's the thing about these stories when we get into them, is they seem cut and dry. But when you dig in, and I think as Rachel mentioned, and as Rembrandt showed us, when we put ourselves in the story, when I think, and I don't want to do another screen share, and I think most of you were looking at the picture anyway. Rachel, if you haven't Googled it yet, it's just Jesus Calms the Storm Rembrandt. Which one of those guys in the boat do you think you would be? And I'm going to tell you straight out, I'm the guy grabbing Jesus by the collar. We need to talk. Like, do something. I mean, that's me.
I'd either be him or, I obviously wouldn't have any knowledge I have now, so I'd either be trying to like aggressively help the boat or aggressively get his attention. Somehow I need to fix this.
Justin and I are basically two sides of the same human. We're doing something aggressively.
Yes.
Assertive. It's assertive.
Assertive, yeah.
I would probably be doing something similar, because it's like, well, let's try to fix the boat. If it's going to go down, like if we can fix it, great. If it doesn't, hopefully Jesus will fix something. But like, I'm going to do what I can with what I have right now.
Work the problem.
Well, I haven't been in a sinking boat before, but I've been in a few like impossible situations where it got to the point where it's like, I can't do anything. Like there's nothing, because when you're in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the night in a storm and your boat is filling with water, maybe what they're asking was like, you need to help us like get water out of this boat.
Right.
It's an impossible situation, but we're still going to try to do water. I would be the one just praying, because that's what I've actually done in impossible situations where I'm like, I can't busy myself out of this. I'm just going to go like hide in a closet and pray.
I love it. That's awesome.
I feel like if I were on this boat, I wouldn't have that level of faith yet, I don't think. Because like right now, yeah, of course, when I have no idea what's happening and I can't control anything, I'm still cool because I know God has my back and like everything's going to work out, the way it's meant to be. But if it were then at that time, I don't think I would have that level of faith. You know what I mean? So I probably wouldn't jump towards praying like I do now. And I would be like, hello, can you help? Why are you still like sleeping?
Why did none of them call out to God?
Yeah. Say that again.
I'm gonna drown.
Why did no one cry out to God?
Well, there was the guy down in the bottom of the boat.
Yeah.
In Rembrandt, but in this?
Oh.
In the Bible?
And we don't have all of them speaking, so we actually don't know if there were 12 with him in the boat, and there were other boats. So I just, I love to expand the picture. It's like, what would this look like? And I want to know who Janine would be.
I thought I'd be throwing up.
She'd be the throwing up one. It's my wife right there. It's the puker. Yeah. Well, okay, so why are you scared? Don't you believe yet? Believe what?
that he's got this.
Believe that I'm special, believe that I have power. I mean, he's already, I mean, Mark, I keep trying to take us back to what the good commentaries tell us, that Mark is depicting Jesus as the Messiah that was unexpected. Matthew wants to depict the Messiah that was expected. So Matthew quotes the prophets all the time, you know, and Matthew sets Jesus up as the one who was prophesied. But Mark is telling us about the Jesus that wasn't prophesied. Mark's Jesus doesn't do anything a good Messiah should do. He's not beating up on the kings. He's not taking over. He's not gathering an army. He's not restoring Israel. He's actually talking badly to the authorities. You know, he's not teaching. I mean, he teaches in the synagogue, but when he gets kicked out of the synagogue, he stops going. So he's not the religious leader they were hoping for. So this is Mark's Jesus, right? So when Mark's Jesus says, don't you believe yet? Is he maybe pushing back against that Matthew's Messiah and saying, look, if you were expecting, you know, me to come, you know, with swords to overthrow the king, and you were expecting, you know, that's not who I am. So why don't you believe in this, what you find right now? You know, and what you've seen me do so far is deal with the human condition of sickness and death and overcome it. I mean, he hasn't raised anybody from the dead yet, but he has cured people of diseases that would otherwise have killed them.
And the choice to put this in, like, right after this whole chapter of Jesus telling parables,
Mhm.
and then he tells the parable, people are confused, and then he tells the disciples, and he uses this weird cryptic stuff.
Yep.
Like, we've just established that when Jesus says something cryptic, there's space for people to ask what he means.
Right. That's right. That's good.
But they don't ask because they know.
Yeah, so that's good pointing out. And I love it when you remind me of things I've said. So, and not that I thought of it, but I mean, you know, from our lessons, but that here's this pattern where Jesus speaks to the crowd and then goes away and then does a deeper teaching to the disciples, information that's only for their ears. And then now we have this sort of real life, like not a parable, to emphasize it, to show it to them in real time. So the kingdom of God is like this is what the kingdom of God is like. Like, it's outside space and time. It's outside the natural elements. It's greater than all those things. You know, when he does this, calms the storm, and then later, you know, months or years later, he says to them, you will have even more power than this. Do they remember this day and think, well, we're going to have the power to calm a storm? You know, like, what is Jesus trying to show them in this moment? Is it just about his like supernatural power, or is it about the relationship? You know, like Dustin and Rachel brought out, you know, that like, I'm here for you. I've got your back, you know, like, why don't you rely on me yet? Right? Why all the cowering and fear, you know? Multivalent is a great churchy word, meaning many, many meanings. And as simple as this story is, it's what, 6 verses. As simple as this is, and as many times as we've heard it, there are so many layers to this thing, so many different meanings that we can draw from this, right? You can try to see yourself, again, from the painting, but who are you in the boat, right? Or what does your Jesus look like? Another, if you guys are into art and you want to go looking, you could Google just Jesus calms the storm and then look at all of the different ways this has been depicted. And it's fascinating to see not only the white colonialism, obviously, that crops up, but what people's Jesus looks like. Some of them, he's standing on the bow of the boat, and he's got his arms out, his robes are flowing, and he hits his wife. And, it's just, it's a Cecil B. DeMille moment, And in other ones, he's not any taller than the rest of the guys in the boat. They're all just sort of huddled around him, and he's just sort of talking. And it gives us different ways to see Jesus. And I think for me, it helps me expand the possibilities of who Jesus is and who he is to me.
I'm gonna go start my other meeting.
Okay.
Thank you for this. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Love you.
Love you.
I mean, I've been in some, life-threatening situations that dealt with nature, but not really. Like, those don't sort of define my life. So I don't need the Jesus that's in the front of the boat with his arms out. I kind of like the Jesus that was still rubbing sleep out of his eyes, wondering what they're upset about.
I'm looking up all the different depictions right now.
It's fun. I mean, when I was going to preach on this and I was going to pick a piece of artwork to show, the one I wanted was Rembrandt, and I ended up just going with it because, sometimes you just go with it. But I probably spent a good couple hours just pulling up other ones and looking at them. And then for a while I was thinking about, I'll put 3 of them on the bulletin cover, blah. I was like, all right, it got stupid, but I just kept coming back to this one. And then we haven't dealt with the last verse yet. So this is how N.T. Wright has it. Great fear stole over them. After he says, why are you scared? Don't you believe yet? Then it says, great fear stole over them.
So is that like different than being afraid beforehand? Like, were they more afraid now?
Good question. I mean, are they more afraid or are they different afraid? I mean, go, Rachel.
So I love Orthodox art. I think it's wonderful. I will send this to the group afterwards as well.
Good.
And this is a very long Orthodox article about this piece that I'm fascinated to read. But this particular piece and some of the other ones that I saw depict Jesus twice in the boat. He's I don't know if you can see.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the boat
like,
in 2 places. He's both sleeping and he's speaking to the storm.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Okay.
Fully
his
human, fully
humanity
divine.
and his divinity?
Mm-hmm. And in this particular one, the other apostles, I don't know what the particular terminology for it is. It's not a halo necessarily, but it's like a sign of sainthood.
The old iconography where they've got the big halo.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite things about those is if you look at old enough art, they can't stand really close to each other because the artists way back in the day didn't know how to give somebody that thing and not obscure the other guy. So they're just really spaced out.
This particular one, they don't really care. They are obscuring. So some of them have all the apostles with a halo, and some of them only have Jesus.
Oh, uh-huh.
Ooh, I found one with like shipwrecks and stuff in it.
Like other ships are going down?
Like there's like broken ships in the water.
Because they said there were other ships with him. Did he only save his ship? That's a whole theological point I don't like. You got to be in the boat with Jesus. I can hear somebody preach on that. Are you in the boat or not? Get down
Are
here.
you there? Yep. Are you sure you're in the right boat?
Come down to the rail right now and make sure.
Take him to the river.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of these it shows Jesus both sleeping and speaking to the sea at the same time.
Interesting that there's a lot of ways to do this. This is what I like about art. There's a lot of ways to understand that, right? Did they need to do that for theological reasons because the guy sleeping couldn't also be the Christ? It's not possible for the person sleeping to also be the Christ, so you have to depict him in two different ways in order to get the fullness of his personality? Or is it just a really cool artistic tool to depict him twice, you know? This is how far apart we sit now. It's fascinating. So we were just pointing out that after Jesus says, "Why are you scared?" a great fear stole over them.
Oh.
So and again, me and Peter, you know, we're like this. I can totally feel this. I go up and I wake the guy up. Like, seriously, what the H? Get up. We're dying here, right? Now, in doing that, I acknowledge his power. In doing that, I acknowledge that I know you're the guy who can do something, so just do it, right? And then he gets mad at me. I'm gonna be like, whoa, shoot, it's coming down now. Well, I messed up, you know, and they did mess up. Again, this is an important point for me theologically, is that the disciples of Jesus Christ should know better than the average person. Like, those of us who say that we follow this person, that we read his teachings and we actively try to follow, like, we should know better, which doesn't mean we shouldn't mess up. I'm not guilty. There's no guilt in my life, right? It's not about guilt. It's not about not being human. But I think he has every right to say, look, guys, you've been following me around now for a while. Like, what did you think I was going to do? Just die? Janine has something to say.
So it's easy to have faith when everything's going well.
Yep.
Yeah, right there.
It's fascinating.
So when we are having a struggle, are we, in essence, waking Jesus up and saying, hey, I need help here?
Oh,
And he's going to be like, dude, I got you.
bless.
Leave me alone. What happened to your faith?
And again, I think you guys heard this before, that in English, the English translation of the word faith is a noun. You either have it or you don't. It's a thing, and you grasp it. It's a noun, it's an object, right? But in other languages, it's a verb. The translation of faith in other languages, in German, it's Glauben. You can faith more. You can faith better.
You can faith.
You can be faithing a little.
I think it's the same as the word doubt. Doubt can be a verb.
Right. It's interesting. Doubt is a verb. Doubt is not a noun. You don't have doubt. Well, you do, but
I do, but it's both.
Right, but we don't.
It's not binary.
Right?
I would definitely say faith can be a noun, especially if you've ever been in like a high school like Bible study. There's definitely a like, oh, I have more faith type thing.
Right. I mean, it's an unfortunate semantic problem for us that you're stuck with this binary where you either have or you don't.
This language is collective.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you have faith? He's not singling, and that's the interesting thing about, like, who do we think woke him up? They all woke him up.
Mm-hmm.
He's addressing all of them. They all addressed him. The faith isn't something individual. It's a collective.
Mm-hmm.
It's a corporate life.
It's a corporate life.
It's a corporate life. Yeah, and
Corporate faith.
so And I find that very important point. And then I love how they say to each other, like he's not standing right there.
Well, I mean, he's already been like popping up like a mole every time the Pharisees are like, who does this dude think he is? And then they're just like, he just knows already. Maybe he'll answer us because he's been answering everybody else who's had something to say. So maybe we'll get the answer. And then he just goes back to sleep, apparently. I don't know.
There's a great book out there called All the Questions They Asked Jesus and the 7 He Answered. All the questions Jesus asked and the 7 He answered. So he asks all these questions, but he doesn't give a lot of answers. Mm-hmm. He very rarely answers the actual question, right? And but I love that they are going to argue with each other, not argue, but they're saying to each other, who is this? And N.T. Wright puts an emphasis on the word is. He has it in italics. Who is this? Right? Even the wind and the sea do what he says.
The difference, though, is the Pharisees, people who are like, I like know what's happening. I know the best way to like circumvent empire. And then Jesus shows up and he's like, I kind of have a better idea. And they're like, who do you think you are? Mm-hmm. And the apostles are like, who are you? They're asking a question because they want answers, mm-hmm. not because they're trying to trap him.
Right. And he keeps showing them over and over who he is, but he doesn't fit. He's not the Jesus they were hoping for. You know?
Well, they're trying to find a one-dimensional or two-dimensional Jesus.
I think most of us are way happier with a one-dimensional Jesus.
Oh, yeah. It's easy because you can put him in a box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. It's way harder to deal with an actual Jesus.
I think it's kind of funny because most people wouldn't want to deal with an actual Jesus. Like, if they had an option to deal with Jesus physically right here, right now, they wouldn't want that.
Right. I mean, it's funny coming out of the evangelical, conservative world, right? Where they're happy with a one-dimensional Jesus who says to the disciples, what's the matter? Why don't you believe? They're happy with a Jesus who guilts you. They're fine with that. They love the guilt, right? They get really uncomfortable with a Jesus who's like, it's okay. I'm not going to hold that against you. Because all of a sudden, then, they don't get to hold that against anybody else either.
They don't like it when it's not fair.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Jesus just has been consistently like stepping past the bounds of what is possible mm-hmm. up until this point. So Jesus is healing on the Sabbath and teaching with authority. He is he's healing people with unclean spirits,
right?
Which is something that gets him in trouble because they're like, oh, well, the only way that you could have the authority to do this if you have authority from Beelzebul. Jesus is like, no, actually, that's not how any of this works. And he's doing all these things that it's just like, you can't do that. Like, he gets baptized.
Yeah.
And he has like illiterate
yeah.
He's a rabbi and all of the people who are following him are illiterate, and he's teaching through parables that people can't understand.
Yeah, in another place in Scripture where I think it's Peter, he says, speak to us plainly. And his reply is, I can't. You don't even get the parables. How am I supposed to speak to you plainly?
And he's just like barreling through all these things that are like possible. And I don't think that who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him. They've seen unclean spirits.
Right?
They've seen like other people. They've seen the law. They've seen him. Like, gosh, I've been trying pretty hard to fight against progressive Christians who try to paint the Pharisees as seminary students, because they're not. The closest, I would say the closest sort of comparison that I would make as a half Jewish person is to white women. The Pharisees are the white women of the Bible.
You're Karen, is that what you're trying to say? Speak to your supervisor.
Because they're like, we don't like what's going on. This isn't great. But we also have like a very set like way that we think that like we need to be dealing with this situation that we're all in. Like, we really do want everyone to like experience liberation, but like white women at the Women's March aren't necessarily like super accepting of maybe different modes of liberation
Or different modes of womanhood.
and different modes of womanhood. And
Yeah.
so they're like, yes, what we're doing is great. Yeah, pussy power, whatever. And a Black trans woman is like, actually, like,
Not helpful. Not super helpful.
I do want to maybe like hang out with my sex worker friends.
Yeah.
I never took a women's studies course because I never went to college. Because my daddy wasn't going to like pay for me to go to like a women's college.
Right. Yeah.
And so,
You know, the progressive church, I know I rail against the evangelical sometimes, but let me tell you, the progressive church as a monolithic body, which they're not, they have a kind of one-dimensional view of Jesus too. And they don't like the Jesus who pushes back and says, what's the matter? Why don't you believe? They don't like that guy. They like Jesus who's like, it's okay, it's all good. You didn't do anything wrong. I don't have any expectations of you or your behavior. It's just love. And I don't, I think we need to continually expand and allow the Jesus that's depicted in the stories in the scripture to be a more fully developed personhood than we're comfortable with.
like, what if Jesus was annoyed?
He is. He's a
Maybe it's not like a special lesson or something. He's just annoyed.
I can't tell you how many times, because you know I'm a passionate person who's been known to like use her loud voice inside, and I've I have said, hey, Jesus yelled, Jesus called people's names. They're like, well, it's not the same. I'm like, well, no, I'm not calling myself the savior of the world, and I'm not giving myself permission to be a butthead. But seriously, let's not take away from Jesus the ability to be passionately upset. You know,
Well, it's also the idea of Jesus can't have negative emotions.
No, we have a British Jesus who has it, you know.
Because anger is sinful. Because being depressed is sinful. Because if you don't get over your morning in time to be helpful, you're sinning. Being annoyed is sinful.
I said something the other day about patience, and they were like, well, no, but it's wrong to be impatient. And I'm like, I'm going to go with there's a difference between a momentary, like, dang, this is taking a long time, and an impatient person who is never happy with anybody else's speed that they run at. You know what I mean? Like, is it me? I don't think it's the sin of greed, and this is my opinion, this is totally opinion here. I don't think it's a sin of greed if I watch a Maserati drive by and I go, dang, that's a nice ride, right? But I don't hate the Maserati driver because he's got one and I don't. I mean, I think we can be too hard on ourselves and paint things as being sort of lifestyle sins that really are just moments of human weakness.
Because also, holy cow, the church does. I loved your sermon, by the way, Jan. And then I went and listened to a second sermon the same day, or they came to the same conclusion. It was great.
Oh, I love the Holy Spirit.
But Christians don't know how to have conflict. Christians don't know how to have conflict. And so when Jesus and his disciples have conflict, I'm like, maybe Jesus was being a bit of a dick. Is he allowed to?
Why not?
Because the only way that Christians can deal with like Jesus and his apostles having conflict is just like, oh, well, they weren't submitting to the teachings of Jesus.
Right.
They weren't able to submit. That's why conflict happens, is because you can't submit.
Right. He wasn't annoyed. He was just teaching.
Yeah. They didn't wake him up in the middle of the night after he was having like a nap because he'd been pouring himself out to literally everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know, when you wake me up in the middle of the night, my dog has been waking me up in the middle of the night. I know I can't be a parent because I can barely deal with this dog. She's like, I need to go outside right now. And I get mad at her because I was asleep and now I'm not. And I would like to be asleep, please. And maybe it's okay if Jesus felt that way.
You know, did you know that in the military, and I don't know, we'll see if Janine will concur, in the military, there used to be, at least, I don't know if there still is, but there used to be kind of a grace period so that if they come and wake you up in the middle of the night, or your phone rings in the middle of the night, and, you know, it's your boss on the other end of the phone, and, you know, you are more than a little irritated, or you say something inappropriate upon waking, it can't be held against you. And Jay just said that's true. I was really, really sick one time. I had strep throat when I was in tech school. And if you've ever had strep throat, it's just a miserable experience. And you can't swallow without pain. I mean, that's just, you know. And anyway, they were pounding on my door, and I had taken, I don't know what they gave me, and it had knocked me out. And so I didn't hear them. And so they literally like kept pounding on the door, and they finally unlocked the door and came in, which you're not supposed to do. I mean, my male sergeant is not supposed to come into my room. And I was asleep, and I was drugged, and I was sick, right? And I wake up, and I'm like, what the fuck? You know, and he's like, are you okay? Like, why didn't you answer the door? And I'm like, I'm sick, I have strep throat, and I had the pill bottle, so I showed him, and he's like, okay, sorry. And somebody goes, what did you say to him? And I'm like, I said, what the fuck? But like, they can't write me up for that. It's not disrespectful, right? It's not insubordination. He woke me up. And so it's a very good point. Why do we have a problem with a Jesus, you know, who can, you know, just be annoyed? You know, it says he got tired. I mean, we're told by the gospel writers who, depending on your theology, were told by the Holy Spirit to write the thing, that Jesus was weary. He was tired in his soul, that he bled, right? That he sweated drops of blood because he was so upset, right? And it says, like at the end of Matthew, he's angry, you know? And the terms that he uses against the Pharisees, right? The gatekeepers, the guardians to the faith, right? The terms he uses are just flat out rude, if not truly insulting. You know, he calls them sons of the devil. It's not very nice. And everybody, like so many people in church leadership that I know have wanted to just whitewash those words and say, well, that's not what it sounds like. It wasn't that bad. And I'm okay with, trying to like open the box a little bit and let some of that out. And, I've been smacked around a time or two by a God who wasn't very happy with me. And, I'm okay with that. I didn't feel good at the moment. I'm all right with that.
Well, you're letting Jesus be fully human.
Was he fully human and fully divine? Or did his divinity self-limit the emotional outpouring of his humanity? I mean, I believe that he self-limited his divine power so that he literally like walked and got tired.
Well, oh, Rachel, you're going to say something.
Oh,
Go for
what
it.
I was going to say is if we're made in the image of God, why can't our emotions be part of the image of God?
Because then you can't view your body as evil.
Heaven forbid we should try to, and I'm looking at this screen of 3 persons here, heaven forbid that we should take body, mind, and spirit and join them together into one lovely picture. Heaven forbid. So yeah, I mean, I do believe that humans have failings. I believe that we have weaknesses that, tend to not only annoy each other, but actually harm each other, that we need to be truly, repentant of and sorry for and try to do better in our humanity, giving ourselves grace to make mistakes, right? I'm trying to move away from a black and white, screwed up, did great kind of mentality to a good, better, best. Maybe not my best day, right? But why can't we let Jesus do the same thing? Maybe this was not Jesus at his best. Maybe he was having a good day.
It's also like when we just let Jesus be also a person, because dualism is what? A lie. It sort of gets rid of a lot of the weird gymnastics that we have to do around Jesus' behavior that doesn't make sense to us.
Exactly.
That invalidates other people's experiences.
Right.
Yeah. I gotta grab a power cord. You guys keep talking.
Yes.
All right, Janine, go.
Yes.
I concur.
I concur.
She's good with the concurring, my wife.
Not to like throw us forward into chapter 5 if that wasn't the plan. But like this is a story, it's storytelling. And like this is the thing. And Janine asked, like, what if Jesus like knew that this was going to happen, or it was part of his plan all along? Because he was the one who was like, I should sail across the lake. You would know of a storm. Like, I feel like Jesus would know if like the weather was going to turn, and he's like, we need to go now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? But he has this moment with his apostles where he's like, you can trust me. I want you to trust me. Before he takes them into like kind of a scary situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
Right.
something bad does happen next. And I think it's important. I think we're almost at. Well, I guess we're all time. I think it's just important to bring up this idea that Jesus calmed the storm, yes, but he was there for them in the midst of the storm. And the work of Jesus in our life is not always going to be to calm the storm. I mean, he calmed the storm and then he hollered at him. So
I think this is a story more about faith than it is about calming the storm.
Yeah.
And for sure. And everybody always blows over that part. And we talk about Jesus calming the storm, right?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is almost always, the pastor's favorite one for proving the divinity of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Look, even the winds and the sea obey it. So he must have been the divine Son of God, right? Right. and the times when, good evangelical pastors or, maybe even Catholic priests will talk about faith in this story, which they usually say for the one where Peter gets out of the boat.
Mm-hmm.
They usually save that for then. If they do talk about faith, it's only just to guilt us into like, why don't you have faith? It's okay to be scared in the midst of a storm. So like Rachel said, maybe Jesus wasn't saying you shouldn't have been scared in the midst of the storm so much as, no, we're not going to die.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't their fear he was upset about. He was their fear of dying or their fear of being alone or something. But I don't think Jesus wants to nullify their natural emotion in a scary situation. This is the cat. This is one of the cats. Here, this is Pee-wee.
I mean, because there's also this like I want you to have faith that this thing that I've called you to is going to continue past this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of points where it's like, oh, I thought this is like what God wanted for me, but like it feels like everything is falling apart.
Yeah.
I mean, after what I've been through, this definitely speaks to me about just presence. That what he wants them to have faith in is his abiding presence at all times.
Yeah,
And
and like, I care about you.
Yeah, that was what we came right at the very beginning that was brought out, right? That he's saying, do you really think I don't care about you?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you think?
Yeah, it's more not a faith of, I guess what I was trying to say, it's not a faith that he's going to fix the situation. It's more of a faith that you're on the right track, that you're I can't think of how I want to say that.
Yeah, that like, I am trustworthy. You're in the right place to be following me, to be in the boat with me. Like, you shouldn't be afraid of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was the one who told them to be in the boat.
And you could also look at other leaders of that time who could very much be using people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we see that now, but it's like, no, you can trust me. You can trust in me. I'm not just going to use you to get to where I need to be.
Right.
Right. And that reminds me to remind us that we're told that the people to whom Mark is writing are those very early Christians, and that Mark's gospel was the first that was written down that we know of. And this early Christian community that was terrified for their lives because of the martyrdom that was going on, because the Romans were killing both the early Christians and the Jews, right? And so Mark's writing this gospel, and here's this very poignant story of, hang in there. It's right to follow Jesus. He is who he said he was. We can put our faith in the person of Jesus Christ. And, the storms that are happening, the Roman storm that's happening in our lives right now, like, he's going to take care of it, But I get concerned when I hear myself say that, right? Because it's a happy pastoral thing to say. Jesus did calm the storm, but the storm doesn't always go away. The Roman storm did not go away.
Right.
The Roman storm ran through Jerusalem and literally took apart the temple stone by stone. They ransacked all of the sacred objects and defiled, right, the holy place of Judaism. And that's where we get the diaspora, right? The diaspora, the spreading of both Judaism and this nascent Christianity into the world. Because the storm didn't go away. The storm got so bad they left. And of course some theologians and some, people, and I would agree, that that's how we got here. And did God mean for the Romans to treat people like that? And did God? No, but God brings life from death. That's what God does. and, God restored the life of, the people of Israel by, letting them continue and go to all parts of the earth. Some of my favorite things, I don't know if you guys think they're just as weird as I do, but have you ever met or heard of somebody from Argentina and they're Japanese?
I know a Japanese Brazilian.
Yeah, their name's like Kira Venezuela or something, and they're from Argentina. It's the weirdest thing, But they went there after World War II. There's a huge Japanese contingent, in the nation of Argentina, and there are Jews everywhere in places where you would not expect. Spokane, Washington, honestly, and the reason there are is because they didn't stay in the Holy Land because they couldn't, So yeah, Mark's writing this to those early people and saying, predominantly Jews who had converted, like.
Jesus is also not the first person who's had a countercultural movement in Palestine in Rome. It is well established. The Pharisees are familiar with this. They have a conversation about it in Acts.
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh, shit, this is not going to end well for them.
Mm-hmm.
This is not going to end well for them. Do we do anything about it? And the agreement is, if this is actually of God, it won't be crushed.
Right. And if it's not of God, it'll die out on its own.
So the apostles are there's not only the storm to be afraid of, but Jesus has been using coded language to share ideas and concepts that are not able to be concurrent with Rome.
Oh yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So are we on the right course? Can we trust you by getting into this boat?
Mm-hmm.
Can we first century Christians trust you to get into this boat?
Yeah, and they were hunkered down. I mean, from what I've, from the early chapter of this and the other commentaries I read, this Christian community that Mark's writing to, again, if this is the first writing that they've got,
Mm-hmm.
everything else they have are just oral stories and very, not first person. If it's 70 AD and they all died when they were 30 or 40 years old, there's not a lot of guys walking around that walk around with Jesus, So they're hunkered down. And, when you lose this, if you study religion, the nascent religion, the emergent religion around Jesus looked very different than Christianity looks today, not just because of culture, but because our Christianity came and went. So the nascent Christianity was brought up from that culture. And when it left, it took on aspects of those cultures where it went. And then when it came back, and some of these writings were done, Corinthians and things like that, that's why Paul's writings look so different than the Gospel of John, is because the religion had already changed in the first 80, 90 years. It had taken on cultural components of the places where it had been, like Rome.
So it's like a game of telephone.
It's like a game of telephone, right? And so Mark is talking to these early folks that haven't played telephone. This is brand new for them. And they, what are they hanging on to? These threads of information that they've been getting. And now Mark finally, whoever Mark is, writes this thing down. And now they have okay, this is here's a linear story. This is what it was like, and it's something to hang on to, something to quote and read again and again, I can't imagine doing Christianity without the Bible, right? But 1,300 years of them did, right? And at least the first 100 years did it without hardly any writings at all. And then by the 2nd century, they had, these pieces of manuscripts and the letters of the Apostle Paul that were being floated around. But a codified document that was well established and well, like sort of agreed upon, it was like 1100 years. Right? I can't imagine doing Christianity without the book of James in my back pocket, which has been such a help to me, or the Gospel of John, which paints Jesus for me.
I think it's really interesting though to also like think about how they did work through like the Bible and how they were using it, because everything was oral. So it's like just like the stories that you've heard from your own family. Think about a community having all those stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd hear that every single time. And so you would know those like the back of your own hand because you'd hear them this whole time. So you would have them in one sense, but you also wouldn't in the other. Like you couldn't be like, oh, well, this specifically says that. And it's always going to be a little bit, I guess, I wouldn't say tainted, but flavored by whoever first told you that.
Yeah.
It's a good point. And as you know, in religion studies, we, what do we call it, post-Renaissance folks, we put a lot of importance on the written word. The fact that N.T. Wright, I know who this guy is, and I can find other writings by him, and I can build, I can say for sure this is what N.T. Wright thinks about a thing, because he wrote it down. It's right here. That's important. That lends it more importance, right? But for those first century Christians, that probably wasn't true, right? And that's why for them, and for the second century, the third century, the fourth century, it didn't matter whether or not the Apostle Paul wrote the first letter to the Corinthians, or the second, which we don't have anymore, or the third, which is Second Corinthians, right? It doesn't matter to them as long as it came from Paul. It came from Pauline thought. It came from an apostle of Paul's who were repeating the words of their master. That's all that mattered to them, right? And so for us, we hear it among a lot of progressive, well-educated folks. Well, if you can't prove to me that the Apostle Paul wrote that book, then I'm not going to give the Bible any credence. Right? But that's post-Enlightenment thought. Right?
Yep.
These folks, this nascent Christians, they would have been glad, I would think, to have something like more tangible, but I may be reading my post-Enlightenment thoughts into their world.
The written word is a function of empire, and the worship of the written word is an aspect of white supremacy culture.
Yeah, I believe it, right?
Which is where the worship of like the Bible comes from.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't dislike writing. Paul wrote letters, right? Those are brown people writing to brown people, right? So, but yeah, over the centuries, over the millennia.
So Paul's a Roman citizen.
Yeah.
So they're functioning within an empire with a mix of Jewish and non-Jewish and Greek and Roman.
Mm-hmm.
But for a very long time, and still, there are so many people who love God, both the God of the Bible and otherwise, who have not felt the need to put it on paper.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And don't get me started on the women who have written way more than is contained in scripture and never got included. And that's been, fun being a progressive Christian who's been allowed to find out about these people. Hildegard of Bingen, and who's the other one I really like? Went right out of my head. Don't ever turn 50.
That's a little ominous, Jan.
Don't ever turn 50.
Saint Sophia?
I'll think of it. They're fabulous. Bridget of Ireland, for one. I mean, the things they wrote, the things they taught, again, St. Patrick. We all know who St. Patrick was. St. Patrick, right? Did you know that Ireland actually has two saints? They don't have just the one. St. Bridget is actually a patron saint of Ireland. And she and Patrick were compatriots. They lived at the same time and they knew each other.
But Patrick,
So, just a note, a ton of the stories about Bridget and Patrick like come from pagan oral tradition.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
totally. Bridget was a pagan.
She was the goddess of the hearth.
Yes,
Yeah.
before she was ever Saint Bridget. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, these are long-lasting oral traditions that have nothing to do with writing and, like, maintain the same function as stories of the saints. And
Yep. Yep.
yes, you can be in the boat with us.
Yeah. Yeah. This is good stuff, people. I think we do good work here.
Oh, one last word. He's proving his trustworthiness to fishermen. Like, Rembrandt does the painting and puts himself in the painting, but like, what does that actually look like for Rembrandt?
Oh, to maybe think about Jesus the
Like,
carpenter?
is it a boat? Or like, what for Rembrandt is like, you can trust me? I
Yeah.
don't know, just a thought.
Yeah. And you know, I don't know Rembrandt's story. I don't know if he came from money or if he was one of those poor painters that got a patron and that's how he got famous. So it's possible that he was a working man. So I don't know his story. I love his art. I do know I like his art. Also Caravaggio, but that's just me. Okay, so what do you guys got going this week? Anything big?
Lots and lots of school stuff. Wednesdays are always my really long day, so and then pretty much all the rest of the week is homework for Wednesdays.
Well, thank you for joining us every week because we sure love having you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to join. It was a little bit later than expected because of the dogs, but we're good.
Yeah. Well, my new job turns out to be almost solely making phone calls. So that's, you know, a thing. Hi, this is Jan from Sunset. And so far they love me, the parents I'm calling, because I'm actually giving them helpful information. But as the attendance secretary, apparently, I'm the one that gets hung up on
Yeah.
more often than not.
Yeah. You will.
Why isn't Johnny in? And you know, Janine and I have said over and over, we know who the population of our schools are. And Misha, you know this area good enough. So Janine's school is Snowden Elementary, which is on the south side of the highway over in the new Geiger area, right?
Okay.
But serves that population and everything south of Highway 2 in Airway Heights.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And my school, Sunset, serves everything north of Highway 2 in Airway Heights, including the apartment complexes that were not built for, but tend to house families of the inmates. So the only reason these people are here in this area is because their inmate is housed there, their family member is housed there. And so, but making these calls day after day and reaching these families and realizing just what they're up against. You know, I got a note today that
Did they have to be
someone
evacuated?
doesn't need us to give them a hotspot because they're going to pay their internet bill today and they'll have Wi-Fi by tomorrow. You know, and another family, like, if the school district could give you $10 to $15 every month, would that help you get the internet? No, we still don't qualify. And then some really, really cool things. So DAA Auto Auctioneers, which I used to work for out in Airway Heights, have bought every kid at Sunset School, like, not a Chromebook, but like all this other stuff, like a pack of stuff, of school supplies, like one of everything. And they're just like, here's the money, just take it. And Davis Communications, which is the only internet company in Cheney, is giving half-priced internet to families who can't afford it, so their kids can go to school. So there's some good stuff coming out, but I mean, you know.
Did they have to evacuate your school because it was like north of Highway 2? Okay.
No, we did have several families though that were stuck in Oregon on vacation because 395 closed. They closed the junction at 395 and 90. And then we did have a few of our own families, like our workers and their families, that have had no power for 2 or 3 days because of the fire.
Some of the families have had.
That's what I mean. Yeah, some of our families, and one of our staff members, the fire was within a mile of her house, and so it did
Wow.
get a little iffy for some of them. So yeah, and then our special ed teachers like Janine are just, we had a couple family come in and, just could name 4 special needs that their kid has. And so the special ed teacher was there and she's making notes and brought in another special ed teacher and they're, talking to the family and stuff like that. And so then later I saw the sped teacher and I said, hey, thank you for that. That was really great to see you working with them like that. And she said, yeah, they're not going to get any of it, because we're doing all this stuff online and those kids aren't going to get any of their special ed stuff they need. So good and bad. I mean, it's, but so yeah, it's,
So we're bringing in 13 kids that are homeless, or staying at shelters. And that's just at my school. That's 13 in some obscure school in Cheney School District. Can you imagine Spokane?
so they can access the internet.
So they're going to bus them.
Yeah, and Janine will be just like monitoring that classroom and helping those students, get online and get into the Zoom call with the teacher and help them do their homework.
And that's only 2 days a week. The rest of the day, they were in the hallway at the shelter trying to log into a computer. A 3rd grader, so.
Wow.
Yeah. So I know we sound depressed and stuff. We don't mean to be Debbie Downers here, but like it's you think like we think we know who we deal with, and then it's the second day of school and we're just overwhelmed.
Well,
So, Rachel, you got anything going on?
I don't think so. But I like it that way.
good. That's nice.
It's nice to have a week like that.
Mm-hmm.
Very
I had a long weekend.
good.
It's great. I don't think I was tired. I'm like, I don't know why I'm tired, but I'm tired. So
This is
that
the-
was good.
This is the first time I've worked an 8 to 5 job for 7 years. So last Wednesday, again, I always apologize for canceling, but I think I was asleep in the chair at like 5:45. I haven't done this in a really long time. I've kept late hours. I've worked, 60 hours a week doing ministry, blah, blah, blah. But to get up every morning and actually have to show up someplace on time, I hadn't done that in a while. That's exhausting.
And oh gosh, like sitting in a chair all day.
I literally do this all day. Try to read the screen and make the phone.
Stare at a computer.
Yeah.
Awful. Awful.
Yeah.
I have 3 potential interested people for a study, so I'm excited. So hopefully I get to talk to them this week and start screening, because I've been working for like 3 months and I haven't talked to a single participant. There was like one person who was interested and then he ghosted me.
Not good.
But that's just gonna happen.
I hear research is like that, huh, Misha?
Yes. Yes, it is.
This is the cat.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, my roommate's gonna be gone for the weekend. Her parents are like visiting from Eugene and they're gonna like go camping. So I've been like super isolated for the past week and a half.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay. I just like have been very like intentional about like saying no to things.
That's good.
Yeah.
So we're exploring boundaries and
Good.
Good.
learning to say no, and learning that my worth is not tied to what I can give to people
There you go.
Or their view of you.
or their view of me. And like, if people demand something of me, I don't actually have to like show up exactly when they want me to
Oh,
and how they want me to.
True.
So
No complete sentence.
we're working on it.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard.
My therapist is gone. I won't see her. I'm like, she's taking most of September off, so I won't see her until the 22nd. So I want to be able to like report back to her. Like, yeah, I worked on this.
Rachel, I don't know if I've talked to you about this before or not. Are you a fan of Brené Brown?
I wouldn't call myself a fan just because I don't know enough about her work and I haven't read a book of hers, but I listened to like a TED Talk once.
Okay. We're friends on Facebook, so I'm going to send you like a bombardment of stuff.
Yes.
But she has a podcast, and I know you enjoy podcasts.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And I can't recommend her books enough. And
Okay.
she reads a couple of them on Audible. And so listening to her read her own stuff with her cute Texas twang.
Yes.
Oh, Janine wants me to point out that the cat you just met, so the laptop is sitting on a box and the cat just went in the box. So if
the
an
laptop-
earthquake happens, it's just a pea
love it.
earthquake. It's just a tiny one.
Mhm. I guess my only prayer is for my dog to figure out what she's doing. She's started this thing. I will let you guys go because Misha, I know it's like the middle of the night.
9:47. I don't go to bed until like midnight. You're fine.
Okay. She like won't go to the bathroom before, because this behind me is a door to the outside. She won't go to the bathroom. It's like, I don't need to go. I'm fine. And also she's like 100 pounds, so I can't like lift her up and shove her outside. And she's like, I'm fine. She's an 8-year-old Bernese mountain dog, and
Oh my
she
God.
knows
Like a
everything.
burner.
And she's very particular. She's like, I don't need to go outside. I'm like, okay. And then by the time like I get in bed, I'm like starting to fall asleep. And then she goes up to the door and she like scratches at the door and looks at me.
That dog right there.
And then
That one right there. The worst part is that she'll just walk outside and then walk right back in. I'm like, you didn't need to go to the bathroom. You didn't need to go anything. You don't need to go outside.
but she like is like, I need to go outside right now. And then if I don't let her out, she comes up to me. And she's actually started like, she gets on the bed and then walks in circles on top of my body.
Oh, she's like a cat.
Oh.
Yeah, she's a 94 pound cat.
Jack would never do that.
Oh, sure.
Like, I need to go outside. But then I let her outside and she goes and then she comes back. And then like she waits and then like at 1:30 in the morning, she's like, I need to go outside.
Oh no.
And then she goes out and she stays out there for like a while. And then like an hour later, she's like banging at the door, like, let me back in. I need to be back in. So just like my dog doesn't do that. I've just started like kicking her outside. I'm like, if you're gonna be outside, you're gonna be outside. That's your choice.
Yeah.
That's why God invented dog doors.
They're like $100 though.
I know. We did put a dog door in the basement door, thinking that when we're gone during the day, we could just put Jack in the basement and have his crates down there with, big fluffy pads and things like that, and he'd be able to come and go. But he doesn't. He stands outside and is an escape artist. I don't know if we've shared pictures with you of his antics. And so, we have this huge hole in the door that doesn't do any good.
I told my friend about it And I was like, I'm thinking I might just like invest in a dog door. And my friend was like, well, what about raccoons? Like, that was her first thing. She was like, the raccoons are going to get inside. I'm like, I don't think we get raccoons in my yard.
They really don't. We have a raccoon that visits the back deck to eat the cat food every night at like 3 a.m. And this raccoon has never gone through the dog door. So.
I don't know, maybe I'll see when my direct deposit hits how I feel.
And I'm not, yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not encouraging you to spend money because they are super, and for a dog your size, the size of the dog, it's
I know.
the worst.
Also
Is
with
this
her. Yeah, it's a slider.
On Facebook Marketplace right now, there were a few people selling those ones that go in the slider
Okay.
for like $25.
Because I tried doing the like snap nets and
Yeah.
it just wasn't closing.
Yeah,
And she also kind of ripped it out.
yeah, we had those.
So because I don't want to like buy the dog door thing and then have her be like, I'm not using this.
I know,
Right,
and that
right.
happens. That definitely happened.
So,
All right, friends.
Okay.
I love you.
thank you for listening to my dog tales.
I love it.
Have
Stay
a
safe,
wonderful
guys.
week. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
all.